Hello guys. After a long time, welcome back to the channel. So President Donald Trump has terminated all trade negotiations with Canada over a TV commercial. You might be thinking, a TV commercial? Yes, you heard that right. I know this news sounds weird and even a bit funny, but thousands of articles are now being published about it, and this topic is making headlines all over the world. So, let's break it down and understand what exactly happened. What TV commercial did Canada make? Why did President Trump become so angry? And how did a decades-old Reagan speech suddenly become the center of a modern-day trade dispute? Let's understand this step by step. Well, on Thursday, President Trump posted this message on his Truth Social account, where he basically said, based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. He accused Canada of trying to interfere with the U.S. Supreme Court's upcoming hearing on his reciprocal tariffs, which is scheduled for November 5th. Trump believes that the Ontario government's ad campaign, which aired during a baseball playoff game watched by over 9 million Americans, was meant to influence public opinion before the court hearing. Now, you may be wondering, what was in that ad? Well, the Ontario provincial government, led by Premier Doug Ford, released an ad that featured an edited clip from Ronald Reagan's 1987 radio address. This was clearly intended to criticize U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. Now, let me clarify something. This ad was made by the government of Ontario, which is one of the 10 provinces in Canada. The Canadian federal government had nothing to do with this ad. It was created solely by the Ontario provincial government. However, they did make a major mistake in this ad. I'm going to play a short clip of it for you, with audio, and then I'll explain exactly what the Ontario government did wrong. Please watch carefully.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
As you heard in the ad, the voice of U.S. 40th President Ronald Reagan says something like this. When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks patriotic. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. And it ends with, the way to prosperity is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. So essentially, Ontario was making a point here. Tariffs hurt both countries, and that even Ronald Reagan himself opposed protectionism, which goes against U.S. ideology and policies. But here's the thing. After the ad was published, President Trump immediately called it a fraudulent advertisement by the Ontario government, featuring former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. And there's a valid reason behind it. You see, while the ad used audio from Reagan's 1987 speech where he warned that tariffs can hurt workers and trigger trade wars, the Ronald Reagan Foundation, which is dedicated to preserving the legacy of Reagan, later said that Ontario had not asked for permission to use that clip and that the ad misrepresented Reagan's words. Now, let's rewind a bit to 1987 when Reagan was president. Back then, Japan was flooding the U.S. market with cheap cars and electronics. Kind of like how China competes with the U.S. today. Reagan gave that speech just before meeting with Japan's Prime Minister at Camp David. Reagan had reluctantly imposed tariffs on Japanese semiconductors, but he made it clear that he didn't like tariffs. He even said that high tariffs had made the Great Depression worse, and that every American worker and consumer suffers from trade barriers. So, when you look at it, Reagan's core message was pro-free trade, but he didn't completely oppose tariffs as a tool to protect U.S. domestic markets when necessary. So, clearly, the Ontario government of Canada not only stole the audio of Ronald Reagan, but also misrepresented his message in an attempt to influence Americans, or at least to sway some regarding President Trump's tariffs. Now, when something like this happens, it's pretty much guaranteed that President Trump will react. And sure enough, Trump took to Truth Social, calling the ad fake, fraudulent, and even suggesting it was meant to interfere with the U.S. court's decisions. Just hours later, Trump declared that all trade negotiations with Canada were terminated. Now, Trump has always called himself Tariff Man. He believes tariffs protect American industries and jobs from unfair foreign competition. So, when Canada used Reagan's anti-tariff message in an ad opposing his policies, it was like a direct challenge to Trump's economic ideology. This isn't just about a political ad. It's about the philosophy of trade itself. And here's the shocking part. The Ontario government spent about $75 million Canadian, or in US dollars, $54 million, to air this ad across multiple American TV stations using audio and video. So, this is really a wild attempt from Canada to influence U.S. public opinion and politics. And the timing of this ad is also very specific. You see, the U.S. Supreme Court is soon going to decide the legality of Trump's specific tariffs. If by any chance the U.S. Supreme Court rules against Trump's tariffs, there's going to be chaos in the U.S. Trump's image would take a huge blow globally, and a key pillar of his America First economic policy would essentially be broken. Though the U.S. administration has stated before that tariffs will continue no matter what, only time will tell what happens after the Supreme Court ruling. So again, this ad controversy is a very complex issue. It's not just that President Trump got angry and terminated all trade negotiations in a fit of rage. There's a deeper meaning behind the termination of these talks this time. In fact, this is the second time this year that Trump has suspended trade talks with Canada. Back in June, he froze discussions over Canada's digital services tax and dairy quotas. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney also responded to this controversy. He said, "We stand ready to advance the progress we've made and build on it when the Americans are ready." Ontario Premier Doug Ford is now saying he will pause his province's anti-tariff advertisement campaign in the U.S. So, Canada is clearly trying to stay diplomatic, but tensions are clearly rising and the damage is already done. You see, the U.S. has already started decoupling from Canada. Compared to last year, the U.S. still has a trade deficit with Canada, but that deficit is slowly reducing. Now, completely eliminating the trade deficit will take some years, but with Trump in office, it's clear that the U.S. trade deficit with Canada will significantly shrink over time. If President Trump sticks to his decision, the U.S.-Canada relationship could face its biggest trade rift since the 1980s. But, as we've seen before, Trump often uses extreme announcements as negotiation tactics to try to extract better terms. So, it's entirely possible that this termination is only temporary, a pressure move before the upcoming USMCA review. To sum it up, a political advertisement, a decades-old Reagan speech, and a few Truth Social posts have snowballed into a major trade crisis between two of the world's closest allies. It shows how symbolism and messaging can have real-world economic consequences. So, friends, what do you think? Is Trump right to defend tariffs as a tool of national security? Or is this just another chapter in his unpredictable negotiation strategy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.